I'm going to talk now about certificate authorities and HTTPS. HTTPS relies on certificates for authentication, that the site is real and that the public key belongs to that site. Without certificates, the security of HTTPS just doesn't work, it's broken. The problem is the whole certificate ecosystem is weak and vulnerable to attack. The security of HTTPS is only as strong as the weakest link. And in such a large ecosystem of chains of trust, a broken link is inevitable. Vulnerabilities within the ecosystem could enable the creation of bogus certificates that everybody then trusts. If someone can issue a fake certificate that your browser trusts, you'll have no idea that the HTTPS can be intercepted and read. The HTTPS that you associate within the URL will still be there, the padlock will still appear as normal, the traffic will be sent encrypted as normal, and the certificate will look valid and everything will look fine. But whoever issued the fake certificate can decrypt the traffic as they know the private key. Let me give you some examples of how this is possible and why certificates can't be fully relied on, and therefore HTTPS cannot really be fully relied on. Probably the most concerning is the practices of the certificate authorities and vulnerabilities due to certificate authority mistakes. Now, if we have a look here, so only very recently, see the headline, Google issues ultimatum to Symantec over unauthorized HTTPS certificates. So what's happened here is Symantec has issued certificates proclaiming to be from Google, but Google, in fact, never requested those certificates. And Symantec is really the market leader in terms of certificate authority. It's the big daddy, if you like, of certificate authorities. These should be the guys setting the standards. And if we scroll down a little bit, we've got here, initially Symantec said that 23 certificates were issued. And when it means 23 certificates, it means 23 certificates that shouldn't have been issued. But then Google has disputed this number, saying it is much higher. Following further examination, Symantec said that there was a further 164 certificates over 76 domains and 2,458 certificates for domains not even registered. So that's the degree of the current level of concern over the practices of certificate authorities and the mistakes that certificate authorities make. And this is Symantec, supposed to be the market leader. And this is not an isolated incident. If we look here, we can see 5 months ago a separate batch of bogus certificates that had been issued for several of Google's domains, including, which is pretty much all of google.com. See all these other Google domains. They were issued by an Egypt-based MCS Holdings, an intermediate certificate authority that operates under the China Internet Network Information Center. So you can understand that smaller certificate authorities are likely to make mistakes, and even the bigger certificate authorities are making mistakes. And these certificates that would be issued or have been issued would have been trusted by your browser and everyone else's browser. There's also far too many trusted parties. Let me show you this. This is the tree of trust for certificate authorities. And we can zoom in here and see all of the different trusts and trust relationships. So certificate authorities exist in about 50-something countries. There's over 1,400 certificate authorities trustable by Microsoft and Mozilla, therefore Firefox. You've even got certificate authorities like the Hong Kong Post Office is a certificate authority. You have subsidiary certificate authorities like the US Department of Homeland Security and US defense contractors who are subordinate CAs, which leads on to another key weakness. Nation states will have influence over certificate authorities, if not actually be able to just issue certificates themselves and be able to claim to be whoever they want to be, Facebook, Apple, your bank, and your browser would trust that certificate as it would be issued by a trusted CA or subordinate CA that's within your browser's certificates that it trusts. This means that the US, UK, China, Russia, the 14 eyes, they're all likely to be able to issue fake certificates that your browser will trust and therefore be able to view HTTPS encrypted traffic that will look absolutely normal to you, but they'll be able to decrypt it. So you'll think that you have end-to-end encryption, but these guys can issue fake certificates, then HTTPS is completely broken. Something else of concern is the X509 standard for certificates themselves. This is pretty poorly designed and it's just too flexible. In the writing of the standard, somebody accidentally copy and pasted the wrong thing and they ended up missing out parts of the standard that was supposed to be in there. So you ended up having a standard and then the things that should be in it that weren't in the standard. So it's a complete disaster. And you can have vulnerabilities in the process of getting certificates. An example of that was null byte poisoning, where you were able to get certificates for domains that you didn't own. And nation states will definitely be working on discovering new vulnerabilities to subvert the process of getting certificates. So if they don't have new ways of doing that now, they certainly will have potentially new ways in the future. And if you have a bogus certificate, there's even free tools available you can use in order to insert that. So here we are, SSL Sniff. So this was originally developed because of a weakness that was found in Internet Explorer. But this tool could be used to insert a different certificate if you were sat in the middle. Obviously, if you're a nation state, you'll have your own version of this software where you can insert your own certificate into the traffic. And as you can see, it says it is designed to man in the middle all SSL connections on a LAN and dynamically generate certs for the domains that are being accessed on the fly. The new certificates are constructed in a certificate chain that is signed by any certificate that you provide. So what are ways to help prevent bogus certificates and therefore your traffic being decrypted? Well, you can reduce the number of certificates that you actually trust. If we go here, options, advanced certificates, view certificates, you can see the hundreds of certificates here that you actually trust. Now you can remove certificates that you feel are just not necessary. What you'll find is that probably 95% of the places that you go only need a very small number of certificates. So if reducing the number of certificates is something that interests you, I suggest this is something you can Google and have a look around, have a play around with removing certificates. But obviously what's going to happen is you're going to come across sites that have a certificate chain to a certificate that you may have deleted. So that's something you really have to play around with. It depends what sites you go to. Let's close that. Another thing you can do is you can watch for changes in the certificates for the sites that you use. So you can see here there's an add-on for Firefox called Certificate Patrol. Your browser trusts many certification authorities and intermediate sub-authorities quietly. Every time you enter an HTTPS website, this add-on reveals when certificates are updated so you can ensure it was a legitimate change. So let me go down here. And you may or may not be able to see that, but what it'll show you is the fingerprint of what it used to be for the certificate and what the fingerprint is for the current certificate. Now, this may seem on the surface to be a good idea, right? Problem is, not practical. Certificates are changed all the time. So you're going to get these pop up all the time, and you're not going to know whether or not the certificate is genuine or not genuine. I mean, you can get clues because perhaps if they change the authority that they use, so they move from, say, Symantec to the Hong Kong Post Office, then that's a clue that something is wrong. But these things, if you install this extension, you'll see you get these pop up all the time, so it becomes pretty unpractical. Close that. Now, there's another option. If you are the server owner or if you have some sort of relationship with what you're connecting to, you're able to do what's called certificate pinning. And what that is, as it says here, is pinning is the process of associating a host with their expected X509 certificate or public key. So it's varying methods of saying, I will only accept one specific public key. So for example, you could tie it to a fingerprint or a hash. So then if somebody actually changes it, it won't work. If you use online banking apps, for example, because I was a security architect for a number of the banking apps in the UK, one of the security methods there is that you pin the certificates. Because your banking app doesn't need to go to lots of sites, you can say, just only allow for this one public certificate or a number of public certificates. Therefore, if a man in the middle tries to change those certificates, it won't work because you pinned it to only those public keys. And certificate pinning works for more than just HTTPS. It can work for VPNs and SSL and TLS and other protocols that you use with those. Another method is to be anonymous in the first place. So if you're concerned about somebody reading your traffic, then if you're anonymous, they won't be able to attribute that traffic to you, even if they can read it, if this makes sense. So, for example, if you are using an anonymizing method, so perhaps a VPN or Tor or something like that, if they then issue a fake certificate and are able to read it, they may not then be able to associate that back to you. So it all depends on whether or not you care about them reading the data or you care about them associating that data to you. But being anonymous is another method. And you can also use VPNs too. But a VPN will only protect you so much. So here we have a diagram showing a VPN. We've got a VPN to this VPN terminator here, and within that VPN tunnel there's HTTPS using SSL and TLS, and then after it reaches the VPN terminator, the traffic comes out as HTTPS only. Now if you've got an attacker that is only able to get in the middle here, it's going to prevent them from being able to change the certificate. If they can get to the traffic here, then obviously they can change the certificate. An example where this might be useful, so say you're in China and you care about the Chinese government swapping out a fake certificate, what you can do is you can VPN out of China and then connect to your server again, which will need to be out of China, and then you can more guarantee that your connection is end-to-end secure because you know that they've not been able to change the certificate while it's been in China. Now, if you want to connect to a server that's within the domain of influence of your threat agent, then even a VPN can be a problem because once you break out of the VPN, then they can decrypt the traffic. So that's certificate authorities and HTTPS and the issues that you have with them. Your main line of defense is to have defense in depth. You use multiple controls in order to minimize the risk, and a control here being the VPN. And you would add additional controls depending on your level of security or privacy need. Those controls which we're going to go through as part of the course.